Welcome to our 2021 CLUE Symposium. CLUE stands for Collaborative Learning of Usability Experiences. Feel free to turn your camera on. It's nice to see the audience as we talk. So I'm Audrey Gerward. I'm an associate professor at Carleton University. I'm also the director of CLUE. And so CLUE is an NSERC-funded training program for grad students, undergrads, and postdocs to provide training beyond the students' degree programs in the domain of usability and user experiences. We've been running this program for 6 years now, and CLUE is coming to an end next month. As the CLUE program is built on fantastic students and partners, wanted our final symposium to focus on them. So I'd like to thank the organizers of the CLUE Symposium, Sonia Chiasson, Jen Kang, Tamara Turk, as well as everyone who's been involved in the CLUE program from its inception, which includes many faculty members, industry partners, government partners, and most importantly, students. So this event is being recorded and will be posted on our CLUE YouTube channel in a few weeks. You can find most of our CLUE events on YouTube, so go check it out. We ask that all attendees keep their mics muted when not speaking. There is live captioning during the event, which you can see at the bottom of your screen. If it's not turned on automatically for you, you can enable it in the Zoom options. So excited for this symposium. We split it in 3 parts this year to help with Zoom fatigue. On day 1, so last Tuesday, we had an Ask Me Anything with our industry partners and 5 student end of internship presentation. Yesterday, we had another Ask Me Anything, this time with our government partners, and we had 11 students discussing their research. And then we had a networking activity, so our CLUE symposium participants could meet each other. And then day 3 is today. It features our final Ask Me Anything session with our CLUE alumni, and a presentation from Jing Kang, who's been analyzing the elements of the CLUE program. So she'll present lessons learned. So we're very much looking forward to questions from the audience. The Ask Me Anything session is all about answering your questions. We've set up a poll. You can submit and vote on your questions. So pollev.com/ageaward. The link is posted on the Zoom chat too. You can type in a new question, or you can vote for the questions that haven't posted. So take a second to open up the link if you want to go and figure out what questions you want to ask our esteemed panel today. So for final Ask Me Anything session, we have 3 CLUE alumni, Joanie, Ouellet, Caidence, Paleske, and John McClelland. Thank you for accepting my invitation. So first, can you start with a brief introduction to give the audience a sense of who you are, your background, when you graduated, and, well, John, do you want to get started?
So hi, I'm John. Let's see, I was at Carleton from 2016 to 2018. And Audrey and Rob Tether co-supervised me. I did my CLUE internship at IBM, and yeah, and after that, I've since gotten a job at UI TV, which just recently got bought by Warner Media, so now I guess I work for them. And we mostly focus in video streaming apps. So we were purchased mostly to work on HBO Max and on a lot of kind of smart TV platforms. So up until now, it's kind of been more client type work, but now kind of moving a bit more into kind of just product focused work. And my job is, I guess technically I'm an interaction designer, but I usually, do a wide variety of kind of UX related tasks. So it could be wireframing, user flows, developing new and improved features for apps, presenting to clients, some UI design when it makes sense. So yeah, it can be, depending on the week, a little bit of everything. User studies also. So yeah, that's kind of a summary on me.
Great. Caidence, you back with us?
Yeah, hi everyone. My internet decided to drop off for a moment, so yeah, I'm back now. Nice to see everyone. As Audrey said, my name is Caidence. I got started as a CLUE student in the first year of my master's degree, and that was in, let me think back now, it was May 2018. Now I work at the National Research Council. I'm a research council officer within the Aerospace Engineering Department. I'm actually on the same team as Andrew Law, who some of you maybe saw speak yesterday in the Ask Me Anything panel with the government partners. I work with him at the Human Factors group there. In terms of the research that I do might be a little bit different in terms of the user experience than what some of the other CLUE students have experienced. And I think that was just because of where I got placed. I started my internship at NRC in the same lab that I now have a job in. So kind of come full circle for myself. I do work in assessing passenger comfort in the air travel experience. I've also recently gotten pretty invested within the accessibility community in trying to ensure that the air travel experience is accessible. Also considering that through the lens of how COVID-19 is kind of placing unintentional barriers on travelers during this pandemic. Some other things that I work on there, assessing pilot comfort for helicopter flight. So as you may have noticed, these types of user experiences are not necessarily related to digital media. And that was kind of something that I learned throughout my experience in CLUE, that UX is kind of, it's more than just interfaces. It's more than just computers, which is what my introduction into UX was. So I got to expand that out. I've been working at the NRC full-time now for about 1.5 years. And I went from being a CLUE student to a term employee to now being a full-time employee there. So I'm very thankful that it's come full circle for me.
Thank you. Joanie?
Hi, everyone. So for me, I started my master's degree in HCI under Audrey's supervision in 2017. And I did my CLUE internship over part-time, I think, winter and summer of 2020. No, 2018. Sorry, I'm getting messed up with years now that 2020 is sort of canceled in our brains, I think. But yeah, so I did my internship at Service Canada under this citizen service branch. And then right now I'm currently working still at Service Canada, but under a different branch. So that's kind of a loop here for me as well, a little bit like Caidence, just under a different team. Right now, my position that I've been occupying for 1 year is pretty much I'm working as a UX researcher. My team, what we do is mostly user testing and usability testing, which is quite related to the CLUE program. But yeah, so we're trying to, we have different stakeholders, so we can work for different forms as much as employment insurance, death benefit, fish harvesters. We also help for the self-assessment tool during COVID. Yeah, so we're pretty much trying to put everything that's PDF or paper form, trying to put them online and making sure that the experience of the citizens is easier for them and accessible. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. So I'll pick a few questions from the list, and I think a really important one is, how did you leverage your skills from your master's degree to get a job in industry or in the government? Caidence, do you want to start?
Sure. So I guess I didn't really give a insight into what my background was. So I did my master's in psychology, and I actually completed it within the ACE lab at Carleton. And I know there's a few ACE lab students on the Zoom call right now. So I was in the advanced cognitive engineering lab, which has a focus in aviation psychology. And I got interested in that lab when I was applying for graduate school because I really wanted to take the I guess, the academic skills that I learned in my undergraduate degree. So like statistical analyses, how to kind of structure a research project. But I really wanted to see, okay, how does this apply to a real world problem? Like, I was really interested in lab work. I thought I was going to kind of go in a cognitive neuroscience route, but really ended up switching gears and doing something a little bit more applied. So that's how I ended up in aviation psychology. And when I was looking for CLUE internships to apply for, I saw that there was one listed within the Flight Research Lab at NRC. So I applied for that one because I could see the direct links between what I was doing for my thesis and what I could potentially do on site for a job. Of course, when you get to the job, things are always a little bit different than being in an academic setting, in a school-based setting. So I kind of had to go through a little bit of a learning curve to do that. But for me, highlighting the skills that I came to the job with was really important. So I'd taken courses in statistical analyses, which I knew was going to be was going to help leverage me when applying for CLUE internships, especially in a very research-oriented job, which the Flight Research Lab is. So I knew that I was going to try and put those skills at the forefront. Also, creative thinking. So how to kind of put that into a CV is a little bit harder. I think that kind of comes when you actually get to meet and talk with the people that would potentially be hiring you, kind of demonstrate that. I'm going to use the word curiosity. I feel like that's come up a couple of times over the last couple of days, but really trying to showcase that. And that just comes out through conversation, I feel, and talking with people. Communication is super important. Being able to slow down your thought process when trying to communicate with somebody. And I know these aren't really skills that you learn on paper in school, but these were kind of things that through an interest in UX, you kind of inadvertently learn. I don't know if that directly answers the question, but those are kind of my thoughts.
Oh, that's great. I saw Joanie nod as Caidence was talking. Do you want to go next?
No, yes, of course, Caidence. I think a really good point she made is that there's things that you learn on site at work that you don't think that you have a certain skills or that you may not have, and then you have to discover it. This applies, I think, to pretty much every job. I think that you may start going out of academia. But yeah, and to go on, like my sort of skills that I was putting forward when I was looking for a job is really being able to communicate them. And from my degree, I think just everything we've done in class, I feel that for my position right now is applicable. As much as doing usability test with Audrey, your class that you're teaching, not sure if you're still teaching it. That amazing class. I mean, we got to do usability tests within one another, and then these skills, I can apply them to my current job. And I can also sort of give advice to my teammates that are not necessarily trained into doing that, because we all know that at the government, people move from different places sometimes, so they don't necessarily have the same background as you. And I also did an undergrad in anthropology. So coming into HCI for me was a little bit of a challenge, because I thought, as you all know, we're all diverse, we're all coming from different backgrounds. And for me, I was convinced that HCI was just technical skills, which I don't have, and I'm still yet learning slowly during my job, and doing some user flows and things like that, drawing some user stories. These are skills that I'm acquiring and just working on while I'm working. And I think one thing to know is looking for a job, I think employers know that there's skills that you can just learn on in the position. Sorry, I spoke French all day, so my words are not coming. But yeah, like there's skills that you can just acquire when you do the job. And I think some employers may know that. So I would just advice for you is just don't underestimate your skills and what you can bring to a team. Sometimes it doesn't have to be technical. People will still appreciate you.
Thanks. John, anything to add?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, echoing a lot of what's been said already. Like for my thesis, I was doing stuff that is, messing around with weird hardware and VR, and there's not jobs in that literally, but if you look at, the skills that you're using along that process, doing usability studies, and just having like a knowledge from the literature that you're reviewing and the classes that you take, I think just kind of bakes in a lot of value to you. And then also the internship, I think, is a really important thing to show that you have that real world experience and get an idea of, what the process looks like in actuality when you're working with a design team, and just the networking opportunities as well. Ottawa isn't, the community is, people know each other. You have the opportunity to connect with people that have experience, and I would encourage people to really ask for advice from them. Everyone that I reached out to in my internship was really open to helping me out, or even just looking at their portfolios can be really helpful. And yeah, being in school also, I think that helps with sort of networking. There's, from the internship and school, there's definitely people that I knew at UI already. So that always helps when you're a familiar face when you go to interview.
That's a really good point, and not one that we've heard so far from our other panelists. So I think the networking aspect is quite nice for you to point out. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like that internship, you can treat as like a long-term interview in a way, and you're trying to make an impression on the people that you're working with, because a lot of people know other people in Ottawa in the community, and even from Ottawa to other cities as well. So any of those things that you can leverage, I feel like a lot of people, their first jobs is either from a personal connection in some way, or from something like an internship where they made that connection available there. So yeah, in terms of transitioning to the job, I think it's really valuable.
Great.
Well, if I may add a point to what John is saying with networking and all that. And for people who have not yet done their internship, if there's any in here, just even applying to do the interviews to all the industries gives you experience, not only to do interviews to do a job, but also enlarge your networking. And so you can consider these people as well to apply for a job. Maybe you didn't end up doing an internship there, but you still have them in your contact.
That's great advice. Another interesting question that has come up is, what's the biggest difference you found in doing UX HCI in real life compared to in school? Is there kind of like one moment that there was a clash between the two? John?
I guess one would be time. I think the schedule that you have for your thesis, and focusing so much on just like that one project versus having a bit more of a time constraint on stuff like client work, I think is one thing. And also just having a team versus doing a lot of the stuff as like a single or a small group kind of project for your thesis, or other research projects you might work on, I think are two different things that jump out to me. Yeah, I can't think of much else than that off the top of my head right now.
Caidence, anything to add to the difference between school and real life when it comes to doing UI or HEI?
It's messy, friends. It's messy.
Messy?
Messy. It's not as straightforward as what is, for me at least, this was my experience. So it's not as straightforward as what was kind of, I don't want to say handed to me in classes, but kind of laid out in class. it feels like there's a lot more going on, because it kind of, I'm going to try and tie in what John said as well. You're not working in silo anymore. You're not doing things either on your own or maybe with one other person or two other people. Like, you're working in a, at least for myself, a very multidisciplinary team. So I work with psychologists, physiologists, engineers, and each one of us kind of has an idea about what the project should look like and what we should look at, and trying to find a middle ground that includes all of these different viewpoints is not as straightforward as what happens in school. So that was kind of the big difference that I found. And for me as well, with a lot of the research that I'm doing, I'm often working with very small participant numbers. With some of the research, like for example, looking at head and neck vibration for helicopter pilots. We only have 4 helicopter pilots. So like, what do you do when the sample size is so small? And with my background being statistics and psychology, where it's pushed that you need to have a certain sample size and it needs to look like this. Well, data is not normally distributed anymore, and I don't have the right sample size, and it looks like this, and it's all over the place. So it's something I learned on the job, I guess, that I didn't get taught in school at all, was how to handle non-normally distributed data, like non-parametric stats. I never heard that word non-parametric in my master's degree. And it's just that I can only speak from my own experience, but that was something that I've learned on the job solely. And I can now say that I feel somewhat more comfortable doing that. It's still very new for me, but kind of like Joanie said, a lot of the skills kind of happen on the job. You learn them in the background as you kind of get new projects. Those are the 2 things that I kind of wanted to highlight: messiness and the fact that it's multidisciplinary.
Joanie?
Yeah, well, I think Caidence sort of made it not necessarily look negative about making it there's more people on your team, that you're not alone compared to your thesis. For me, that's actually one thing that I appreciate with my team, is that we do get to review and analyze data from user testings and all that all together. So we have different points of view, and we make sure we provide the best analysis and report to our stakeholders. But I do see the point that like you're less free and you become dependable on other people for them to do their work, for you to continue doing yours. Otherwise, like John said, timelines are different. And at the government, I feel there's 2 types of timelines. Either really slow because everything needs to be documented in a hierarchy and going from directorate to directorate to directorate. So that becomes a little bit frustrating because you have to wait for those approbation before doing your project. It's, you know, we complain about ethics at university, but it's not that long compared to the government. That's what I found out. And there's another way that sometimes that we work, it's in agile. Agile. And this one is really fast. So when you're used to be working now at the government where it's taking more slow, and you get placed to a project where it's more agile, when there's consultant from Deloitte, Acture, and all that, it's really fast paced. And sometimes, like for me, it's hard to get adjusted because I have some projects that can wait and I have some projects that can work really fast. And I think that agile is not, it's really different than what a thesis is in terms of you have to recruit your participant really fast. You have to produce your user test within a week, and your report, you do some card sorting, which is really quickly done. And sometimes for me, I do feel like the analysis is not completed, that we should have taken more time to do it. So this is something that I had to learn in my work, to work fast-paced and accept that sometimes the analysis is not complete when it has to be produced this fast.
Can I just add something to what Joanie said? Yeah, so thank you for bringing it. I didn't mean for it to sound like working in a multidisciplinary team was a bad thing. I actually learned so much by doing that, because it's so easy to get trapped in like what your own mental model is of UX, or whatever research field you're in. So working with other people from different backgrounds really opens up your eyes to like, huh, I didn't think about it that way. And then what ends up happening is you have this research idea that's kind of a blend of everyone. And it's very, it's a great way to work because I feel like every time I have a conversation, I learn something. So I just wanted to add that.
That's great.
Another thing to add, I guess, kind of talking about multidisciplinary teams, I think that really stresses what was mentioned earlier about having those communication skills. And also if, for example, in like a product company, a lot of times, like the ratio of people working in design versus people who are developers is like, there's way less people that are in design. And so having like learning how to like work within developers' structures, how to communicate things to developers, you know, negotiate with them, or like project managers on, oh, you know, this would be something that would be really good for users, but maybe there's this tech constraint and stuff like that. I think are all things that are definitely different from how you work on a project when you're in school versus what you see when you're in an industry.
So what's the weirdest UX related problem you've faced at work? Give you a second to think about it. Let me know who comes up with something first.
I think I have one. So we were asked by an external client to user test a chair that was going to get mounted on the wall. So it's just like the seat base of a chair, and it's mounted to the wall on these two rails that and you can slide it up and down. So you can adjust it for different body proportions essentially. And so they came to us and they had only, they hadn't tested the upper and lower percentiles for body proportions. So it was kind of like an average body proportion. I'm talking for different groups of people, and they had only looked at male. So when they brought the chair to us, I'm pretty tall, like I'm 5'10". So the chair was okay for me, but then we had other team members that were a lot smaller than me, like height-wise. And they had put so much money and invested into this prototype. And you're like, well, I feel like you've kind of missed an aspect of the people. Like you have this really good product, but there's something kind of stopping a certain range of people from using this product. So before we'd even gotten to like user testing with, we were going to look at like a pressure map on the seat to make sure that it's not putting too much pressure on the lower back and those sorts of things. So this was just kind of something we were able to identify before we even started. And they were kind of like, oh, we didn't think about that. So they had to re-prototype before we actually got to do any of the work. So it's not really a weird problem, but it was just kind of something we were able to identify because we're so human focused. So like there's, you can have this really great product, but if the people don't want to or can't use it, then it's not going to do what you want to do, I guess is what the moral of this story is.
Did you get the impression that the clients, the company, basically had only tested it with their own people, and they were all, you know, tall men essentially?
Yeah, so what happened was it was a team of 4, and they came to us. 2 of them came to us, and the I guess he was the owner of the company, 6'5". Okay, and then the other person that was there was also male and at least over 6 feet. They were taller than me, so I know that they were around 6 feet. So yes, what my impression was that their version of product testing was kind of circling it through the people that already knew the product and were developing it, which gives you a very narrow view of scope, I guess. That's exactly it.
Thanks for sharing. It's a great example of why people need us to product test and to user test. Thanks. John, Joanie, do you have an interesting example of something sort of a weird UX problem you've faced?
I don't have weird problems that I've faced. I had weird experiences with citizens because sometimes I do get to moderate the test or to interview with people, and I do get some anecdotes during those interviews. I'm not sure if you want me to share some, but
if there's something that you want to share, yes, I think having good anecdotes helps.
As being a woman, I think moderating tests with males sometimes can be uncomfortable. Let's say it like that. We do ask them at the end of the test, do you have any comments or do you have things? And you do get a lot of weird comments, such as, does the moderator comes with the gift card that you're providing us, and things like that. I've experienced a lot of these. There's also, we did some tests where we were asking the participants to share their screen. What you can see on there is also surprising sometimes. Their backgrounds, let's say, of their desktop is not always age appropriate. I'll say it like that. So I didn't have weird technical problems, but these weird experiences do come along with the job sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so sorry to hear that you're encountering these. It's sadly not surprising, but perhaps something to warn or give initial instructions to people, at least sort of,
when it was happening, these moderated tests, I mean, those comments were mostly since we moved to online working, where our moderated tests were via Zoom, like today, because we did not experience such thing when we were doing in-person testing. But when it was not only me, it was other female in my team as well that were receiving these comments. And we decided that we're just not going to put our camera on, which makes it a little bit less human for people sometimes, but it's just, we want to avoid problems for us as well.
Thanks for sharing. John, any interesting experience or problem you faced?
There definitely has been a lot of, I mean, I'm struggling to think of something specific. A lot of times issues come up around just like hardware constraints. We, for some apps, we're using pretty low-end hardware. So things like satellite set-top boxes, or just using kind of weirdly organized data structures that create a lot of constraints that you wouldn't normally think would be a problem. And it just kind of goes to show that when people initially make products, sometimes they don't take into account you know, a user's perspective, and then that can have cause issues, you know, down the line when you want to redesign an app. And so, yeah, that's definitely created a lot of really interesting and weird problems. I think another one is just like observing how resistant users can be to reading things that are like directions on an interface. So yeah, things can always be surprising when you try to make things very obvious, but sometimes the way things are made obvious aren't actually how people think when they're looking at something. So that's always interesting to see the actual result of what you intended in those situations.
Thank you. So CLUE is ending. There's a few internships that are finishing this term. A lot of the students that are listening in may not have a chance to have done or to do an internship with this program specifically. So partly to them, what are the things, the activities you did in CLUE that helped a lot in the workplace, or what should those students try to copy or to go and get skills for that were elements that you got through the CLUE program? Caidence or Joanie?
I don't know. I was seeing nobody wants to go first, so I'll go. I think one good thing is the networking. I think that's the key word with CLUE, is to do some networking and not being shy. I mean, you see all of our names on top of this. Well, at least for me, your names are all on top. Just connect with people. I mean, you can find us on social media, LinkedIn and all that. So if you have questions for any of us, always feel free to just ping a message. I think most of us are ready to answer you, or will redirect you to any useful resources that you need. Otherwise, just attend events and you learn a lot. Sometimes you may think that there's a lot of event. I'm not sure if COVID has diminished these numbers, but just attend everything. You learn a lot, and it's very diverse in terms of one day you can talk about VR, and another day you can talk about psychology things and human behaviors. So you do learn a lot, and you always find something that you can input into your work as well.
I think that if I could offer maybe one or two pieces of advice, it would be to, regardless of internship or job, try and be as willing to learn new things as you possibly can. So like for me, my background was like heavy on the quantitative analysis. I'd taken a little bit of qualitative analysis, didn't really have any like on paper skills for like journey mapping or anything like that from school. So I learned a lot of what I know about qualitative analysis on the job. But if I had kind of stuck to what I was comfortable with, I wouldn't have been able to realize how I could extend myself to learn new things. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice. And also kind of echoing what Joanie said, keep the communication active between the people around you or your supervisor, or there's like one or two other lab mates or coworkers, whatever you want to call them, to just have conversations about what you're working on. So that way you can, I guess, take advantage of that multidisciplinary aspect, because you're going to learn something new with every conversation. I can pretty much guarantee it.
John?
Yeah, I think those what's been said has been really good so far. For me, I think through school, I got more experience in the sort of qualitative area, and then the CLUE internship, the quantitative area and the CLUE internship really helped with the qualitative part of it, and kind of looking at a sort of outlining a process of defining things like pain points and creating problem statements, and you know, how you take it from a question to implementation in industry, focusing on user needs. So that was really helpful for me, and yeah, that networking is something that's really valuable, and yeah, starting to get to know Agile frameworks and how they work is something that can be good to observe during your CLUE internship, and also I think is a really good thing to have on an application or to mention in an interview, because there's a good chance you might be working with developers that are functioning within that framework. Accessibility is another thing that either through your CLUE internship or through school, I think having exposure to that has been valuable for me. And if you're someone who's versed in that area, it can be a good opportunity to get time to look into that more and show that you can, develop your skills while you're working. So yeah, just that ability to research things and learn on the job, I think was mentioned already, but I'd echo that as well.
Thank you. Well, that comes to an end in terms of this session. Thank you to all three of you for being generous with your answer and your advice. I think it's been really complementary to some of the other pieces of advice we've heard this week.